everybody. Welcome back. So, today we're going to talk about why it's important to know your thoughts versus the thoughts that arise in your mind, and things that have been like programmed through watching different shows, through people you've interacted with, from just being a kid and picking up on things subconsciously, and now taking on those words, those thoughts, and stuff as your own. So, one of the main things that comes up a lot, especially in the personal development and spiritual um, area, is that you have to know the difference between your thoughts, what's your thoughts, what are not your thoughts, and letting go of the thoughts. But it's important to know that sometimes you do know. So sometimes it's important to like appreciate what you are doing instead of sometimes when we hear that like, oh well, oh my god, I'm not doing that, I'm not looking, I'm holding on to every thought because I think they are me, they sound like me, they're coming, like they're in my own head, in my mind, and so I'm thinking it's me. But so let's appreciate what you are doing. So a lot of people, most people, what they are doing and what you should appreciate is the times when you are able to differentiate. So, for example, if a thought comes up about something like about like harming someone because you're just so angry and intense, and like maybe it's a sibling or something, sounds intense, but thoughts arise and people don't want to talk about those thoughts that arise, but they do arise. But like, that that's something you would never do. And so like that emotion comes up, it passes, and you usually work through it, or you end up, being calmed down or diffused by a conversation with someone or with that person you were angry with. And so you were able to differentiate the thought because it's so extreme, and that's something you would never do because it's totally outside of like your morals and ethics and stuff. But when it's like bordering certain lines, um, and you are unsure if that is something that you would or wouldn't do because the thoughts maybe arise a lot or often, perhaps because you're in a certain situation or certain environment, or whatever the case it may be. There's just so many different reasons why. But the thoughts arise, and they sound like you. And so, how are you able to differentiate if it's you or not? Well, so that is why it is so important to write it down. And it's like, well, I don't want to write it down. Well, you could, if you like being on your phone a lot, use that as a tool that it is, and write it in like your notes. You could put like a code on it if you don't want people to find that and stuff as well. There's apps for that. And so you could write down like things that you are. You're a kind, loving person who would never do like ill harm or ill will towards someone. You're a truth teller. But so when we start writing these down, and when we go over it, because it's important to go over these things, it's important to know that like when we say we're kind and then we're in certain situations and those thoughts come up, because you're gonna be like create that as like a habit in your mind, that like this is who I am. So your mind's gonna maybe go through that as a list, or it comes up when you're in a situation, and something's happening and someone's being really rude, for instance, and then you're just like, wait, I'm a kind person. And so it's important to still differentiate while you're writing that list your boundaries, because you don't want to just put a smile on your face and be like, I'm a kind person. So that means I don't confront anyone. I don't stand up for myself. I don't stand up. Like, that's not what that means. So that's why it's important as you're making this list to also have like what your boundaries are too. It's just like, I'm kind and respectful to myself, and I like, if someone's trying to like harm me or say something awful, um, it's like it's okay for me to say something in a calm, respectful way, because that's the type of person I am, And some people would be like, oh, I'll just like get in their face and blah blah. And it's just like, well, then you're just changing who you are, and you're not staying and keeping your calm and your cool. And we don't want to activate that type of like, let's say, like, quote like air quotes, like muscle, which is not a muscle, but it's like a type of muscle. Let's say we're trying to activate the good stuff. We want to be able to stay as calm as possible, but calm doesn't also mean that like you don't feel any emotions ever. You could feel the emotions, but you're able to come back down to like a good base level of calmness to be able to think more clearly faster. So all these things are really important in order to be able to go out into the world and be like, okay, well, I know who I am. I know what kind of person I am, and I know how to be able to differentiate some of the thoughts that come up. Because then, like, when you're in an angry situation and like all these harmful thoughts maybe come up in a moment and they're not as harmful as like, an extreme situation, you might say those things out loud, but knowing who you are, that like I handle things respectfully, I take time to think about things before I react. And sometimes it's important to learn to think about things and say it like in that moment as well. But knowing that, like, if you're working on filtering yourself better, learning to maybe think way more before you speak, or work on cues of like, I just need a few moments. Can I get back to you on that? Like certain cues you need to like write down and practice to add to your vocabulary. Like, yeah, you've seen it on TV or in front with your friends or someone saying it or something, but or you haven't, and it's important to practice them because it's like, oh, I could pull these tools out at any time. The tools would be also like, I need a few minutes to think about that. Okay, this is like a lot for me to process. Just give me a few moments. Like, and you still do it in a way that's you and who you are, and or who you, but like, and sometimes it's like, well, who I am is like maybe is someone that like is someone that, not that you're trying to get away from it, but you have certain masks on that like have this angry intense mask on, so you want to unlayer that, and so the person you truly are inside, which is this kind, thoughtful, understanding person, you want that person to be the one that responds more so in these situations. So even sometimes thinking about your higher self. So your higher self is the type of person that the person that like who you're either meant to be or you're going to be in the future, who has done all this work. What does that feel like? How do you embody that? And what does that person act and do? And it's important to know that like it's not about being like, oh, I'm this posh person who's better than people. Like, it's not that. It's like, it's still like, oh, I'm this kind, loving person who's aligned with life and I feel fulfilled and stuff like that. So how does that feel? And bring that feeling. So it's like, oh, how does that person act and think and stuff? So try to bring that into when you're writing like about who you are, what your morals are, what your ethics are, and then having that as your baseline and having that feeling, and then letting go of that image of that higher self and knowing that like, oh, I'm the higher self. I could be that higher self right now. I'm acting in my best and highest version of myself right now. So that's also really important. And so other ways to know, important ways to know like your thoughts from random thoughts, other than like the extremes, and writing, like obviously, like I said, writing it down, trying to write out who you are, adding to that list, subtracting to that list as you grow and evolve, so that you could stay more centered and aligned when things and opportunities come up, so that you're not like putting on more masks and more things when you are in your business mindset or in your personal life and stuff. Like the ethics and the morals and stuff should be aligned. Like, yes, of course, maybe we act a bit differently with certain people and in certain situations, but like we're not going to be cheating and stealing in one area and then being okay in another area. And it's like, well, I'm able to differentiate. Some people will be like, I'll be able to differentiate it. The subconscious doesn't differentiate. Your body doesn't differentiate it. It's almost like putting on more mask and layering things and putting band-aids on things. It comes out in different ways, and stuff. So that's why we want to try to make sure we're aligned in everything we do. And And yeah, so other ways to know your thoughts from like random thoughts that come up is something that like I find that some people don't want to hear, or some people have come to terms that like, oh, that is important and have noticed the difference, is meditation. So different forms of meditation, mindfulness also important, being mindful and present. So noticing like what are you doing throughout the day. So like if you are between commercials, I was doing this for like I feel like a couple weeks or a few weeks. I kept like having my phone around me for some reason, and going through some stuff, like scrolling through some stuff, and it was stuff that like I was like interested to hear about. I think it was like different types of quotes or something. I was like going through, but I kept picking up my phone throughout the commercials that were popping up. And so just by doing that throughout commercials, I felt like after like however time, I was just like at nighttime, my mind felt like it was like going through pages of scenes like really, really, really fast. And I was just like, okay, what is it that I'm doing that's differently? Right? Because you want to be putting yourself in that position of like a scientist, right? Like you want to put a hypothesis out there and try to figure out a conclusion and a solution. And so just testing it out, it's just like, okay, well, this is what I've been doing differently, because it was I was in everything else was like pretty similar, so that was easy to pick out. And sometimes we need other people to pick it out for us, someone that we trust, or a professional, but someone we trust, not people that are just picking on us. Make that clear. But so when we are going and scrolling through things and picking up our phone between commercials, our brain is just like constantly on. And on top of that, like a show is trying to get you like addicted and watching as well. So it's doing things that's making your subconscious also reduce this attention span as well, and make you more likely to sit there and have this like rush without it feeling like this rush, but like this rush of like this feeling of like, oh, wanting to sit and stay and feeling like it's relaxing, even though like it's not actually relaxing. Um, and so, yeah, so then when I stopped doing that, picking up my phone and making sure I put away my phone, which I usually used to do, it just like all of a sudden went back to, because obviously I wasn't doing it long enough, but like it's amazing how the brain could just like, could, could fix itself, is a word that probably not, well, yeah, I'll just say fix itself, to just figure out, okay, this is not happening, this is not affecting me in all these ways. And it was able to like, bring me back to my baseline. And so meditation, so being mindful of what you do. And so especially like in the mornings and afternoons and stuff, like really trying to start your day being mindful. So like picking up your phone and scrolling, I know everyone talks about that, but simple things as like trying to just do the dishes, trying to just do the laundry, like without constantly listening to things. Like we think we're multitasking, we're actually not being present in our day. And then when we are, and we're alone with our thoughts, we're like, what are these thoughts, what are these things? And then we want to distract ourselves again and create this loop of like, okay, I need something, because my mind is able to stop thinking those thoughts, but it's like it's not stopping to think those thoughts. You're just creating a distraction. And so trying to be as mindful as possible and be present in what you do, so that you could embrace the calmness. So some people might think it's like boring, especially if you're constantly doing that, especially if you're constantly watching and listening and doing all these things, and you feel productive, right? You think you feel productive because you're just like, oh, I'm getting all this information and I'm doing this and stuff. And like, I'm not saying don't do it ever. Like you could do it once in a while perhaps, but I'm saying like, just try not to throughout the day, most days. Like once in a while, it's best if you don't, but like, it's best to try to just do the best you can. And so we're just trying to create like a baseline. So your baseline needs to be at least calmness. So not, oh, it's full of distractions and full of listening to podcasts and trying to feel productive and stuff like that. You want it to be calm, Because let's say, like, especially if you're the type person who might be at the moment having some anxiety, and some people don't even know they have the anxiety, but and then that anxiety, maybe it feels like this intensity when they're around people and they feel like they're more energized, but it's actually the definitions are and the signals are misdefined in their mind, and so, and in their body. So when they actually meet people that are actually not calm and not good for them and more of a red flag, and hover in that energy, which feels like anxiety sometimes and stuff. For some people, it doesn't mean like people with anxiety are red flags, but I'm saying, like, if you have anxiety, and then you might not be able to always feel, depending on what kind of anxiety and when, and other things, of course. But let's say, like, you have the anxiety and then you meet people and you think that, like, oh, I'm so much more energized and excited, and like you truly believe you might be an extrovert, and you constantly hang around with people, but let's say those people are constantly like making fun of you, and you just laugh it off and joke it off, and because deep down you're just like, oh, I understand where they're coming from, they're just joking, they don't actually mean that, and stuff like that. So you have that like kindness within you and that level of understanding, but that kindness comes with no boundaries of like, hey, that's not okay for them to talk to me like that, and you're not okay to like put up boundaries or sit in the uncomfort of speaking up for yourself and saying like, hey, I don't like that you said that, or like you notice it afterwards, and then even later, like, you don't use any cues or tools to say, okay, next time they say that to me, or I'm going to bring it up to them in a phone call, or I'm going to meet up with them and say like, hey, I don't like that and stuff, and being able to have those conversations, because then so then you truly know what type of people you're around and stuff like that, because you're coming from a place of, like, let's say, this type of anxiety, and so you feel like this energy of intensity. It could be chemistry, and so when you're hanging around with people that like that have that level of intensity that feels like chemistry, not that you're a red flag, let's say it feels like a similar wavelength, then you end up hanging out with them, or let's say going on multiple dates or whatnot, and then over time you end up like there might, the red flags will show up here and there, but you might just like be like confuse them and say that like, oh, they're synchronicities, or they're signals from the universe that like this is meant to be and stuff like that, because the signals and the definitions and everything in your mind and body are switched. And so yeah, so like it feels like that level of intensity, and then you're going to confuse it with chemistry, like, oh my god, I want to meet someone and it needs to have that level of chemistry. Whereas if you meet someone that's like more calm at their baseline, you might confuse that with boring. Now that's not to say that like if you meet someone and you feel that like it is boring, that's 100% the situation, that it's that they're calm and they're good for you. That's not what that means either, right? Because every person and every situation is different, so I can't just give those type of statements general statements, when there's so many different types of people that I don't know that are watching with different circumstances. But knowing that like what your baseline is, what your calm and your peace is, and trying to take out the word boring. It's not a bad word, but it's not great because it's overused, and might put a stamp on something and put a negative connotation or negative feeling towards something that might actually not be boring. It might just be calm and peaceful, but you're not used to it because you're used to such a high level of like some type of intensity, or what you think is chemistry, or what you think is excitement, but which is actually disguising itself as anxiety, as red flags or whatnot. So it's important for you to take away that word, or try to catch that, and just replace it with another word. But it doesn't, I don't mean to say that like, oh, but I truly know that I don't like doing that. Well, not like doing that is okay. Knowing what you like and dislike is okay. As we grow and evolve, we it's okay to learn that. But it's just that, like, with all this technology and all these ways of like reducing attention spans, a lot of things have become boring, air quotes, like that are actually not boring. They're actually like peace and stuff. So that's why, like, when a lot of people like people in their like 30s and 40s, maybe late 20s, I'm not sure, like they remember, a lot of them remember in the Western society, remember, like, just being at home and or going outside and just looking at clouds passing by. Whereas now it might be considered like boring if the kids start doing it. It's like it might be nice for a few seconds, but like they need to do something because they can't sit still as much, perhaps. And so yeah, so again, it's important to know those differentiation. And so why is it important to know the difference between of why you should know mind practice mindfulness and practice meditation? Because when you start calming yourself down, especially some people could be in like a high level of anxiety and have and not be present and stuff and hear their intuition, right? Like everyone is different. But for most of you, and even for them, if you want to hear your intuition even better, like if they think they already hear it loudly, like it could get even better and they could hear more signals from their intuition and from the universe. Meditation and mindfulness are going to help you through that, because then you're going to create this baseline of peace. And you're going to, if you're the type person that like it sounds like, your inner voice, but maybe lighter, like softer, perhaps for some, like you could hear that more clearly, or you're able to not question your next steps as much, because you'll know, like, no, that's definitely the right step for me, and it feels good, and it feels calm, and it feels peaceful. Like you'll be able to do that. Perhaps a lot of trial and error for some people, or for most people, but at least you're trying to figure it out. And like I'm sure there's like lots of ways online now that people are teaching how to increase their intuition and stuff like that. And so yeah, so it's going to help you. And why is it important to know and hear your intuition? Well, you are going to feel and know that, like, wow, I'm really not alone. Like it's not that like, oh, well, I'm a religious person and God or the source and stuff protects and guides me. Yes, of course, but like the universe and source has also given you this tool of intuition that guides you and lets you see things. And sometimes, let's say, for example, like you just keep staring at something and then you go out throughout your day, and then later on someone grabs it and it breaks. And I was just like, oh, I just, for some reason, I was just staring at that throughout the day, and it was just, I honed in on that and I didn't know why. But it doesn't mean that you're gonna like be able to not make any mistakes or not do anything wrong, but you'll be able to see and trust the universe more and be like, hey, I feel like I shouldn't take that path over there, for whatever reason, even though it looks like roses and rainbows and it looks great, but for whatever reason my intuition is telling me to go that way. And then you realize, like, you hear later, like, oh, there was something bad happen that way at that time. That's like a more extreme case, but little things like that, or like taking a job or having someone, um, you know, like if you're renting your basement, let's say, and, renting it to the right person is really important, and learning to trust your intuition with that. And it doesn't mean that, like, if you ended up going through a situation where you took that other path and it was like, it was horrible, that it's bad, because it's a lesson. So if you see it as a lesson, be like, wow, okay, thank you. Learning to say thank you to the universe and saying, like, okay, thank you. I know this is happening for me, as a lot of like mentors and guides online like have said, like, you should say thank you, that like this is happening for me. So that's not for me, but that's what I've learned. And then so that you could show your appreciation and gratitude, that like, so that you could come to a more peaceful state. The more times you try to say that and and you believe it, and when you keep doing it and saying it, be like, oh, I know that happened for a reason. Maybe it's trying to tell me that that, like this lesson I haven't learned yet and I need to look at this situation better, or this red flag is a tool, this signal that I saw is a red flag and it's like a tool which kind of feels like you've upgraded to the next level and you're able to see things more clearly. Or maybe like you stubbed your toe, and say, like, you start with like little stuff like that. You stubbed your toe and it's like, thank you, universe, I know this is happening for me. And it's like, and it's a way for me to practice, perhaps, like, I'm to not let this affect my day. Like in The Secret, I think they talked about it for a few minutes, like, oh, someone stubs their toe and they just continue to have like a spiral of a bad day. Well, you could use that as a way, and little things that happen throughout the day, to kind of like be like, okay, that hurt, that was painful. Like, it's not about suppressing anything. And then you could say like, oh, well, thanks, universe, because you know what, that probably happened so that, like, maybe I even like was supposed to slow down today and see things more clearly and be more mindful. You could change it to whatever you want, and you could choose that. And then sometimes, like, your intuition will speak to you in certain ways. And sometimes, like, whatever you think is the signal, you'll probably get like an affirmation, or you'll go online or someone will send you a quote, and you'll see right away like exactly what you were thinking in your head, of like what that reason was, will show up in like a text message, or on like in a video that you were watching, and they're talking about the same thing that you were just thinking, which would affirm that, like, oh, I am like thinking the right thoughts. And that was exactly what, that was my intuition actually speaking to me. But heard it as like me and my voice, which two in one, like one in the same, not two in one, two one in the same. So yeah, so stuff like that. So yeah, so there's a lot of reasons to know your thoughts from random thoughts. But in order to like navigate the world and feel more peaceful, I find that it could really help, because then you're able to really trust the universe and trust your intuition, and trust that like life really does want the best for you, because then you're able to stay in like a more peaceful, grounded state. Doesn't mean you don't have all these emotions sometimes, but you're able to get back into like your peaceful state much faster than before. Maybe before it took several days or several weeks, but now it takes a day. That's a big deal, because then when you're thinking, when you're calm and peace, you could think more clearly. And I know some people that, especially if they're like more strategic thinkers or more logical and stuff, they sometimes don't want to do meditation. They don't want to do mindfulness practice because they're afraid. Because this is how I was. I was also afraid of like that my mind was going to change, because I liked that I was able to think very strategically for work and stuff, to think, come up with like different stuff for companies. And so I was afraid of that changing. But what ended up happening over time was that I was able to think more clearly and come up with more creative thoughts, because my brain and my body and everything was more calm, and I was able to think outside the box. Because outside the box is really like opening up your mind and your energy to source and the universe and signals and stuff. And so you're able to, some people call it downloads. Some people say the downloads, but some people, it could be their intuition, and downloads, And so, but you are able to connect to this other realm of thinking, that you're just like that ends up coming easily to you. And so and then you hear about like some people writing songs and like big hits and stuff, and they're just like, they decided to, they go with the flow of the universe, and they are trusting the universe or something, and they'll say that like, it just came to me. But they say it in a way where they're literally trying to say that like it's a download. Like some people might just be saying that as like a like a regular statement that's thrown around, but some people are just like, no, it just like came to me, or my, like, I was just writing what came to me, like I don't know where it came from. Sometimes some books, some people talk about that they've written. So yeah, so it's really important, because then you could stay more aligned as well, so that you can live a more peaceful life. You can see things more clearly. You can see the lighter, more peaceful path for you, by knowing the difference between your thoughts, your intuition, and these random thoughts that come up. So you're not like holding on to them. You end up like being able to watch them go by. And there's meditations, and like I've done meditations that I thought I created, but like I think like other people have too, where it's just like you picture the thoughts, and you watch them go by. And at first it wasn't as easy for me because I was like constantly in my head and coming up with ideas for things, and so I would like have a pen beside me and write down the thoughts still. But then now I've just in my brain and my mind like have just known that like, okay, those thoughts can come after my meditation sometimes, or if they do, they'll come up back again. Even like if I might forget it for a bit, they'll come up again. Or once in a while, like I might just need to grab something and write down something that like I feel like came to me that's like very intuitive and stuff, and I would write that down. But other times but in the beginning it was just like thoughts after thoughts of like, just too many thoughts that I wanted to just like have a more peaceful experience. Doesn't mean I have no thoughts that come up. It just means that like I'm able to better differentiate what's my thoughts, and what are the thoughts that are just like popping in my head that are like programmed from when I was younger. They're repeated words, and someone used the word whispers, which is like I talk about how it's like it's said sometimes softly. Like sometimes your intuition is like very, very soft, but sometimes it's like it's said softly as if you think it's your intuition or it's you as well, where like mean things that other people have said that you've taken on, that like maybe it doesn't sound as mean, but it's like, you keep repeating it in your head and you don't know you are. It's not as vocal as like you saying it out loud, but it's there on like a light recorder, like and on a low sound in the background and stuff. So learning that like, and then as you clear up other thoughts, those ones kind of come a bit more forward, and you're just like, wait, I've been repeating that in my head once in a while, and that's actually not true. And so learning to like let it go, bring it up and let it go, or however type of meditation that you prefer, or even just sitting there in a type of silence or focusing on something, or guided meditations are great to start. And just starting them with like 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. It just being there and sitting there is really good. I also find breathing techniques to be really helpful. The Wim Hof breathing technique was really helpful for me, helped me calm down, and see things more clearly as well. And so just trying to make sure that while you're doing that breathing technique, trying to stay present when you're holding your breath and stuff like that, if that's safe for you to do. But I found that that was really helpful when I would be in situations that I would like sometimes be worked up in, or I used to be worked up in. I was able to see things more clearly and not get worked up into it. And it's not about erasing the emotions, it's about being able to see that I'm able to respond more clearly and rationally, and the emotions I could still feel them and it comes up, but it's not taking over in a certain way. And so yeah, so I hope this helps for anyone who thinks that like, you know, there's something wrong with them. There's nothing wrong with them. It's just the brain is just wired a certain way. And you just being here and listening to this, and you would have had like some things that I've said, even if it's one thing that you remember, at some point, it's an extra tool that you have. So that's like a really big win in life, to be able to have an extra tool here and there to be able to use in certain situations. But yeah, it just takes like one step in front of the other, of just like a 5 minute meditation, or just like, okay, today when I wash the dishes, at least for the end of it, the end of the washing dishes, because maybe you're so used to washing dishes with listening to something. Okay, the end of washing dishes, I'll just listen to something for 2-3 minutes, and then it'll stop, and then it'll be in silence after that. and then trying to be present, or putting on like some type of guided meditation to help you be present while you're washing dishes and stuff. So even if it's like sometimes when I want to listen to a guided meditations and I can't find the type that I want, I create it. So like I press record and I create it. So it kind of like puts me in a spot where it's just like the spotlight's on me and I need to do it because I'm trying to put this out there and help people. And I hadn't, like, I won't put it out there. And so, or I haven't. And so it's, and even though sometimes I want to, but like I haven't yet. And so it's a way for me to put me in the teacher seat for those situations to be like, okay, I'm actually doing it and I'm responsible because this is like going to be put out there. So it makes me be more present. Maybe the first few times, you're a bit more conscious because you're speaking and you're recording yourself. But then after that, you become more comfortable with it over time, or you can if that's what you like. But yeah, so there's lots of tools out there, and yeah, to be able to differentiate your thoughts from random thoughts and become more mindful and present. And I'll continue to talk about this and talk about different ways that you could know who you are from the masks that the world maybe has, like, has programmed you with, but you get to program yourself now, and you are able to do this. This is your life and your mission in this world, to trust who you are and love who you are, and know that you are just a kind, loving, good person. And yeah, and you could start your path from there, no matter what's happened in the past. So yeah, so I'll see you all next time, and have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful day.